Okay, finally, Bohemian Rhapsody. Popcorn junkies have seen it. We went, we saw. I wasn't excited about going to see this to begin with. Not because I hate Queen. I don't hate Queen. They have some. You can't hate Queen's music. Queen's music is remarkable. But the whole concept of a sort of film just about Queen doesn't excite me. Just doesn't excite me.
It's not your thing.
No, but that said, a film about Elton John does. So I'm looking forward to Rocket Man. But how are you feeling going into this?
Really excited because I love Queen and I love the musical We Will Rock You, and I think they are geniuses, absolute geniuses. I loved his whole story and the tragedy behind him, you know, the tragic life we knew that he had. So I was fascinated to find out all of, you know, what was the truth and what might have just been gossip over the years about him.
When you're going in to see a film, you have to quite actively say, I'm not going to go into this prejudging it. I'm not going to go
Especially
into
when you're reviewing.
Well, no, absolutely. I'm going to give this all the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to embrace it.
Because there were an awful lot of terrible reviews.
There were a lot of terrible reviews.
There were a lot of terrible reviews, and actually, me, my mum, my sisters have been crushed by the reviews because we were so looking forward, and it was going to be a big family outing. We were all going to go together, and we were going to have prosecco and all of that. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I must admit, I went in thinking this is going to be a sort of Mamma Mia experience, and I think I've gone on record as saying that is not my cup of tea, even though I got married to Dancing Queen or something. So I knew we were going to get something camp and sort of, you know, looking for sort of family entertainment, if you like. It's a
12A.
It's a 12A.
So we immediately knew it was going to be very edited down version of their lives.
Well, exactly. Not just that, but also it's been quite widely publicised. It's been an unhappy production with Dexter Fletcher being sort of parachuted in at the end to rescue production, essentially. Bryan Singer, the director.
Dexter Fletcher, my sister's ex-boyfriend.
Yeah, well, Bryan Singer himself, the director of films like The X-Men and The Usual Suspects. In fact, I interviewed him many years ago about The Usual Suspects. He was fired due to absence from set and clashing with the key cast.
Due to absence from set? What
Absence
do you mean?
from
Not
set.
turning up?
Not turning up. Was fired for absence and clashing with the cast and crew. So there you go.
Good gossip.
So Dexter Fletcher came. So here's the thing. There's a montage at the beginning of this film, which we don't share everything we think of a film after we've seen it. Now, the first montage going into this film, I think, was a really, really beautifully shot montage, and I thought, bloody hell.
I loved it.
And it was all the close-ups of the Rolls Royce, it was the close-up of pianos, it was amp buttons being done, it was all sorts of brilliantly, you know, luscious coloured. I thought, oh, okay, hang on a minute. This is very sort of constructed, unlike A Star Is Born, which gives you almost a documentary side slant on the whole rock world. I thought, okay, well, this is going to be quite contrived and constructed and quite highly coloured and a bit cartoony.
It was really exciting. I actually just did feel like a pulse through my whole body, and I think is it when he first goes on to Live Aid?
Well, yeah, they start.
So we start at the end of the film.
At the end, yeah.
And as he walks on, and you've got him just from behind, Freddie Mercury, and he's just moving in that way that just used to get us all crazy, Freddie Mercury. And then he walks through, and bam, there is the audience, and we settled in. We thought, right, we've got a great movie.
Yeah, and then as soon as that had happened, all I can say is that a slow, almost a sense of disappointment crept in as I began to realise that the other band members were executive producers on the film. And what started to happen was it became a promotional video for the band Queen, with little moments scurrying off into what I thought was the much more interesting story, which is Freddie Mercury. There is clearly a massively complicated and emotional story to be told about the Freddie Mercury story, and this film doesn't tell it.
It's like Queen Light. It's like the
Totally
sanitised
it's like Diet
version.
Queen.
And it was really interesting because Maddie's had quite a few friends. Maddie, our 15-year-old, quite a few of her friends have been to see it, and they all love it. And the cinema last night had a lot of young people
you
in
said,
it.
yeah.
A lot of young kids. Yeah. It felt a bit Disney. It was like Disney does Queen. And maybe they knew what they were doing, a very sanitised, almost cartoon-like version. Don't know if any of you remember the Cliff Richard summer holiday film, We're All Going On a... It was a bit like that.
Sort of really rich colours and
rich colours and
but also an energy of kind of
and they would almost say a line and then they would stop and then they would all look at each other and it was like we looked at each other a number of times in the cinema, didn't we? Like, is this really happening?
Yeah, it was odd. It felt like it was a musical without musical numbers other than them performing them on stage.
Yes, it was just like a musical.
Yeah.
That's right. It was a musical. And you know how musical just is a light
Yes.
version of the story? That's what it was. So in a bit Mamma Mia-like.
Well, it was, yeah.
So if you were going along with a gaggle of girls, you don't really want to think too much, you know, you don't really want to know the horrors of and the sordid part of their lives, then, you know, you would probably really enjoy this because, you know, I can't think of many people that don't love Queen and their music is through it.
Well, one of the things I did get going through it was, as I'm not being a Queen aficionado, but being an Elton John fan, it struck me how many songs I'd forgotten Queen were responsible for. So it was really nice to revisit their back catalogue and go, oh right, God, of course they did that. And when you hear the range of inventiveness in those songs, they are a remarkable band. Now, none of this is about diminishing how remarkable the band is, but is this the film that's appropriate for such a remarkable band? And I felt that the film was stymied and hampered by a desire to almost equalise every band member's responsibility for their success. Now,
this one was responsible for this tune.
Absolutely.
We don't care, actually.
We don't care. But
we
also,
just see it as Queen.
Exactly, but it became a little bit too predictable that each section became, this is the origin story of this song. This is the origin story of this song.
Do you know what? You saying it's like a promotional video, and me saying about how many young people have gone to see it, and we were really surprised when we said we were going, and Kiki, our 11-year-old, said, oh yeah, I love Queen's music. This generation know Queen.
Yes.
And I wonder whether it was like a super long promotional video to bring in the next generation, the next audience to come and buy into Queen.
And if that's,
why the last 15 minutes of it, I mean, what did I say all the way in the car? Got to get home and download Queen. Got to get home and download Queen.
Absolutely. But is that what you're going to the cinema to see? Is a film's responsibility simply to be a promotional video?
For us, no. But I think for a lot of people, they will enjoy it. For us, no.
Because for me, I thought, you know, the jury's out. I've read a few really scathing reports about Rami Malek, and I thought there were times where he was. Well, I thought there were times where he was ghastly, but not in his performance. More in the way he was directed, and I think left stranded in some scenes. He was left stranded. But actually, the more I think about him, the more I think he delivered a really impressive, because as you rightly said, his voice is odd, his teeth are odd, but so was Freddie Mercury.
So was Freddie Mercury.
I mean,
some people say, those teeth have got in the way of him being who he, of acting.
In an interview.
Well, they got in the way of him as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that line when he said, these teeth give me, what was it he said, and something gives him a better voice. I thought he was absolutely excellent, and as if you say, and as you say, if this movie was being made in such stormy waters, and for him to have the courage to go 100% for that, you know, and have inhabited Freddie Mercury in the way that he did, I mean, God, it takes some courage to strut. I couldn't take my eyes off him. I thought he was mesmerising.
No, he was mesmerising, and I think that's a really important point to make. I mean, okay, you know, you go to a film just to watch the film. You shouldn't have big signs up saying this was difficult to shoot, the director resigned here. That's not what an audience wants when you go and see a film. But full credit to Rami Malek, actually. He will have been in a torturous situation where, even right down to little details I saw in the press, that when they were shooting in actually Freddie Mercury's semi-detached house for those scenes. They had to keep stopping because it's in the flight path and all this kind of stuff, and there was too much noise around it and all that kind of stuff. So I think he delivered quite a consistent performance within choppy waters.
And everybody had, I mean, you know, the writing, if you just keep in your mind promotional video, cartoon, like musical, nobody really had any really great lines.
No,
I mean,
didn't.
he had some very funny lines, didn't he? There were obviously direct quotes, I think, from Freddie Mercury.
Well, the best lines were the lyrics. It allowed me, once again, it reminded me in a weird way of the Amy documentary. It allowed me to listen to the lyrics on a couple of the songs where he was creating them, and I thought, wow, that is quite radical and that is revolutionary. So but the question I asked myself is, a documentary would do that. If I chose to look into the origins of any of these songs, that would tell me that. Was this the most entertaining way to do it? Now,
I came out and I said to you, I want to find the best documentary that there is on Queen.
Well, I came out thinking I want to make a proper film about Freddie Mercury's life, because the way I felt they dealt with the sides of his life that obviously led to him contracting AIDS and what have you. It was so sad, but it was dealt with in such it's just very trite. And I understand it's a 12A and it has to be sort of packaged in a sort of easy, sort of digestible fashion. But I did feel there was just a lot of manicuring of the Queen myth. I thought this was the big tombstone that's going to go, you know, the sort of almost the monument to Queen, that they want to be the story that's Queen. This is the Queen story. And the way they divvied up all responsibilities, it began to really grate.
And it's interesting, isn't it, that it has been universally panned by the critics
but
and
loved
yet
by a
the
lot.
theatres are full.
I mean, the whole film is kind of bookended, if you like, with, as we said, him getting up and about to go onto the Live Aid stage, and then it's the story of the origin of the band up to the point that he performs at Live Aid. And I thought, I was at the point that Live Aid started, we were about 15 minutes from the end, a part of me was a little bit weary, and I was like, oh Christ, you know. And then they played the set, and what I thought was really bold and brave and successful was that they virtually played their whole set on stage.
Yeah.
Because they got 20 minutes every band, I think, in Live Aid, and I think he did 3 songs. And I was captivated. It was like watching Freddie Mercury live again.
It was spine-tinglingly brilliant. I was emotional. I had tears in my eyes. It just took me back to that time for Live Aid. Do you remember how exciting Live Aid was?
Oh God, it was so exciting. And I thought that sense of era was nice, and I thought the atmosphere was nice.
But also, your heart is broken for him, because you've seen just before him tell the band that he's got AIDS. You've seen him rehearse and his voice isn't quite there. And then he goes out and he's utter brilliance, and you know that you're watching genius. And Rami Malek was absolutely brilliant. You couldn't get better, could you?
No, you couldn't. The only problem I did have with all of the Live Aid stuff was I could see how absolutely green screen that audience was. And after having seen A Star Is Born, where, you know, they went through the great complexities of performing at Glastonbury, concealing their identities, then coming off stage. And so
because they couldn't afford to do anything else, I was reading.
No. But wasn't it amazing that the atmosphere of a real atmosphere of a gig was so much more impressive than it felt too artificial. When they were all standing with their backs to the camera and you're looking at the crowd, you could, you can forgive it.
I could buy into that. I was fine. It was when they went to the close-ups of the crowd that it went a bit. But he was so brilliant that I just sort of lived with it. It was fine.
Yeah.
Felt like they only had about
600 people. No,
600 grand to make this film.
This film? What do you think? Yeah. I know what you mean. It didn't
felt
feel
like
there was
very
a lot of
low
money.
budget.
Yeah.
A lot of it was in a type 5, a type 4,
Yes.
and then it was like really clunky singles. The editing,
It was
whoever the
very
editor was,
slow.
The editor did not help the director,
No.
let me say that. It was very
I felt they could have trimmed a good 10 minutes
we're going
off.
to go to a single here. Oh, we're going to go back to a single here, and I felt that it was really led.
But that's the
editing.
direction. I mean, that is how a scene was covered.
Is
If the
it?
scene was covered with those shots, it was very, the scenes in the house with his
direct-
family, it was just like, well, cut. It was very sort
All
of
up,
achingly
we're going to go
slow.
over here and cut.
It was.
The
So
editor does not get around for.
And I
for
think
me.
for a story about someone as colourful as Freddie Mercury, you could afford to have far more experimentation and fun with the footage, with the way it was shot and the way it was constructed. I think he's a sizzling, fizzing, remarkable guy, and it's a remarkable story, and it felt like at times the film needed to reflect that in its style, and it just didn't. It felt pedestrian sometimes. It felt
Very
like a TV
pedestrian.
drama. I mean, I could very much see this on TV. Well, in summary, I would say, if the film achieved anything for me, it managed to slam dunk the idea and confirm the idea that they were a remarkable band. But I have a fear that it was essentially nothing that the film did as a film that made me come to that conclusion. Even down to the scene that I thought was lovely at Live Aid at the end. What was great about it was how faithful to his real life performance it was, not something the film had brought to that performance. It wasn't an interpretation of anything, it was a reflection of what we'd seen. And so in a sense it made me re-look at the story of Freddie Mercury, but it added nothing to it. And in the re-looking, I wanted more than this film offered me. And so I got slightly frustrated. So on the one hand, it kind of, like you, it fired a light of interest. It ignited that, oh my God, the poor guy. It made me feel so compassionate about him. I think Rami Malek did perform the impossible with a character who was bizarre in himself. And I think a number of the critics have perhaps forgotten just how bizarre he was.
Yeah.
And you're right, in interview, I remember seeing him in interview in the 80s, just before, when he was, and I
He
remember,
was like
yeah,
that,
and I remember thinking,
darling.
God,
He did talk like that.
who is this man with
Yeah.
his teeth? Yeah, so I think it was a faithful performance. All of that said, after seeing a film like A Star Is Born, where that feel and the grain of rock starness was felt so lividly, in such a sort of real, visceral way, I just felt this was too manicured. Can you believe that the mad record producer who rejects the Bohemian Rhapsody, that was Mike Myers? Austin Powers. Yeah, that was him. He just looked like he couldn't move. I just felt this was treading on eggshells all the way around the story of
Yeah.
Queen, and this film was
That's a good way
trying
to
to
put it.
make the story agreeable to everyone. And in being agreeable to everyone, I think that's why it's going to do well. But fundamentally for me, it wasn't a major success. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10.
That's interesting. Walking on eggshells, I think that's a really good way of putting it. It's walking on eggshells. In summary for me, think Mamma Mia. That's what you're getting. This is, and think Cliff Richard's We're All Going on a Summer Holiday. It is Queen light. It is a totally sanitised version to appeal to the new generation of people that are going to buy Queen records. I think Rami Malek did an incredible job.
I do too.
I think he's had some really severe reviews. As we've said through this review, he was a bizarre character, and there was something almost wooden about him. I love the scene with him and Kenny Everett. Actually, I would like more of that. We'd forgotten how amazing Kenny Everett was.
Yeah. There's a biopic to be made.
Yeah, there's a biopic. Yes, I agree with Mark. The first 2 minutes and the last 15 minutes were incredible. It's made me want to look for the best documentaries on Queen. It's made me download all Queen's tunes. I think if you are going not really as a filmic lover, a film lover, or you're not really going to find out the truth of Queen and you just want to go and have a bit of a giggle with the gang and have a bit of a laugh and a bit of rock on to the Queen music, then go along. But if you're looking for anything more, you'll be wasting your money. I want to give Rami Malek, because I think he's had such a hard time, and I want to give the director, whoever the director was for the first 2 minutes, the last 15 minutes, I want to give an 8 for really hard work and attention to detail. And Rami, you would have had to lived and breathed this man, and you gave us the very best, I think, of what we could expect. For the rest of it, and for the executive producers that had their fingers all over it, fingers in the pies, not letting us see the real story, 3.
I agree. I think you're right. I think it was a musical like Mamma Mia where they had the same lead into songs, but rather than breaking out into song in like the real world in that weird way musicals do, they went to stage to perform it.
Yeah.
So it kind of lacked that.
Just didn't work.
If they'd gone for the musical side of it, you'd have gone with the artificiality of it all. It was almost like it went to jump the musical fence and then it fell in the ditch.
For more film and family fun, don't forget to click the subscribe button and make sure to click the bell to never miss an update.